Om Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kuru Me Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada. Om Shri Mahaganapataye Namaha. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Madde Guru Paramparam Asmadgurubhyo Namaha. Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavad Padam Shankaram Lokashankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badharayanam Sutra Bhashya Krutau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishwaro Guru Ratmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyoma Vatpyapta Dehaya Dakshina Murtaye Namaha Om Shri Medha Dakshina Murti Swamine Namaha Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhetamastu ma Vidvishavahai Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Gratitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaita Varshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambatva Manusandhadami Bhagavad Gita Bhavadveshinim Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutaha Stunvanti Divyaistavaihi Vedais Sankapadakramopanishadaihi Gayanti Yam Samagaha Dhyanavastita Dadgatena Manasam Pashyanti Yam Yoginaha Yasyantanna Vidhusura Suraganaha Devaya Tasmai Namaha. Namaste everybody. Once again, and a happy new year to all those who have just now joined. So today, what I propose to do is to give you a summary of the first chapter that we completed in the last class. And if time permits, I will give you a brief introduction into the second chapter. It's sort of a teaser. These days, teasers are very popular for movies and all that. So like that, a small teaser for the second chapter. So we will now get into the summary. See, whenever we are wishing others a happy new year or a happy Diwali or a happy Dashera or whatever, the happy occasion, Merry Christmas. One thing is underlying intuitively, a man wants to lead a happy life himself and wants everybody else also lead a very happy life, isn't it? That is why every time we wish anybody, we wish them happiness. And in this leading this happy life, we cannot deny that a healthy life is one of the most important components of a happy life. It is not the only component, but it is one of the most important components. And when I say a healthy life, I refer to both physical health and also mental health. A healthy physique and a healthy mind together makes us a healthy person. And when we talk of a healthy physique, we need to take care of two factors. One is the surroundings in which we live. That should be such that it should not cause any diseases. Yeah, clean atmosphere. But given the realities of this, the centuries after centuries that we have experienced, this is a very difficult proposition that we can assure that we will be living in a clean and healthy environment always. So, the second and a more important factor kicks in, and that is that our body should have a robust immune system and sufficient resistance to fight the potential diseases caused by the environment. And of course, I don't need to stress these things. We have been experiencing all this in the last 2 years or so. These environmental factors, these external factors, we can call it as objective factors for a healthy physical life, which is common to all. I mean, whoever is living in the same environment, they are exposed to the same kind of, you call it pollution, you call it, virus infected environment, whatever you can call it. But the immune system or the resistance power is subjective, because this would vary from individual to individual. So whenever we are talking about physical health, one is an objective factor which is common to all, which is the environmental factor. Another is a subjective factor, which is the strength of the individual immune system, which vary from individual to individual. This we all know is a fact from our experience and from what we have been going through these times. Because we have lesser control over this objective factor, because bacteria, viruses, other disease causing germs and all, they abound in the environment. Every movement, we are actually exposed to many of these viruses and bacteria which are there in the atmosphere. But we have a much greater control over the subjective factor, which is the immune system of ours, because Bhagawad has given us the immunity system, and all that we need to do is understand how the system operates for me. Because again, this immunity system differs from individual to individual. Of course, mainly depending upon the lifestyle one follows. So we have to first understand our immunity system, carefully nurture it, and keep it robust through a disciplined lifestyle. So this is the so far as our physical health is concerned, how to remain healthy and thereby happy, physically healthy. And the same principle we can extend to the mental health also. And when I say mental health, what I mean is a mind which is free from all kind of psychological diseases. What are they? Psychological diseases like fear, anxiety, stress, strain, worry, anger, jealousy, inferiority complex. There are so many of them. All these are psychological diseases. And our Shastras, they very beautifully describe these as Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsarya, etc. All these are various psychological diseases. Here again, there are two factors. One is the objective factor, which is the world of people and objects that we live in. Each and every interaction with the external world involves an emotional engagement and has the potential to cause one or more of the psychological diseases which I mentioned. Isn't it? And whenever we are facing these kind of problems, generally what we do, we attribute these problems to the external entities, be it persons or objects or situations even. My time was not good. How the wife or husband is responsible for my stress or my tension. How the children are responsible for my anxiety. How the old parents are responsible for my frustration. So all these, we try to externalize all our these psychological problems and try to fix the responsibility of my problem on some external entity, be it a person or an object. So like in the case of a physical health, these external factors are common to all. And we have lesser control over this external factor. Because that is how we interact with the world. We interact with all other entities in this world. But our scriptures point out that for mental health also, the external world is not totally responsible for our mental problems. Just as the environment is not totally responsible for the disease, but the strength of our immunity system plays a significant role. Similarly, our scriptures point out that our mind is a very important factor, and our psychological problems depend upon the relative strength or weakness of our mind. So this is this is how we have to understand the psychological, the operation of the psychological environment. So therefore, if we have to lead a healthy life psychologically, we have to find out whether, irrespective of the psychological problems that are thrust upon us by the external world, whether we have got sufficient mental strength, sufficient resilience to face the situation. And if we have got the sufficient mental health, the advantage is, even when the whole environment is unhealthy, our resistance, our immunity, our psychological immunity will be so high that we will not get these psychological diseases. So a healthy body means diseases are less frequent. And even if we get a disease, its intensity will also be less. So less frequency and less intensity. And of course, we can extend that the after effects of the disease also will be mild if we have a strong immunity. And comparing the same thing so far as our mind is concerned, if our mind has got sufficient strength and resistance, even though we face a number of psychological problems, like I said, frustration, stress, strain, irritation, jealousy, anger, fear, security problem, diffidence, etc., the frequency of that mental diseases will be less, number one. And secondly, even if we get one or more of such diseases, the intensity of the psychological disturbance also will be less, whether it is anger or frustration or whatever it is. And this degree of intensity can easily be tracked by tracking the time taken to recover from some psychological disturbances. Because it is quite normal that at the spur of a movement, something happens or somebody says something and we become angry. Anger immediately shows up in our mind. That is quite natural, because that is what I would call the immediate response or the reaction of the mind. When something really affecting our thoughts or our thinking happens. But what is important is to note how quickly we recover from this anger. How quickly we are able to do away with that feeling of anger. So that will indicate that how strong our mental immunity is. And in fact, there is one very nice Subhashita, which actually explains this. This is with reference to anger. This Subhashitam is there. Uttamasya kshanam kopaha madhyamasya praharadvayam Adhamasya tvaho ratre papishto naiva munchati. This is a very beautiful one. What it says is, Uttamasya kshanam kopa. Who is a Uttama? A Uttama is a person who has got superior or strong mental health. Even if he gets anger, it will be kshanam, momentary. He will quickly recover from that and then he will carry on. Then Madhyamasya Praharadvayam says. In case of a person with average mental health, his anger, it will last for Praharadvayam. In our calculation, time calculation in our scriptures, one prahara is supposed to be around 3 hours. So Praharadvayam is for about 6 hours. Of course, these numbers and all, we should not take it literally. Roughly, you can call that it will last longer. About a few hours it will last for a person who has got an average mental health. Adhamasya tu ahoratre. In case of persons with very weak or poor mental health, the anger will last for a day and night. 24 hours before they recover. Sometimes it may be longer also, rather. 48 hours, 72 hours. In some cases, the anger lasts for even months. But of course, eventually those people recover. Again, depends upon the strength of the weak mental health, how weak it is. In weak also is a good week or a worse week or worst week, like that we can find the grading. But in the case of people who are adharmic, who are wicked, bad persons, who are referred to here as papishta, the anger never leaves them. They are always angry. So this is how the Subhashitam actually describes the state of the mental health of people, rather. Different kinds of people. So therefore, a healthy mind is one in which the frequency, intensity, and also the duration of the emotional disturbances is less. And finally, the after effect also. Because things like anger and all, even though they are psychological phenomenon, they have a very direct after effect on the physique of the person also. So we can actually experience these things when we all get frustrated sometimes, isn't it? I mean, that's the reality of Vyavaharika samsara. But even during that, we will find that some people, the frustration continues for a very long time, sometimes months and years. But there are some others who are able to quickly put things behind, and then they bounce back like a rubber ball and continue with their life. Some period, they may be emotionally disturbed, they may be frustrated, but they are solution-oriented people. They will immediately in their mind analyze what is the cause for the frustration and then try to find some solution so that it doesn't happen again, and then they will move on with their life. Those are persons who have got a healthy mind. So therefore, for a healthy life, a happy life at the psychological level, that requires 2 types of efforts. First, of course, is adjusting the external condition. To some extent, we can do that. But somebody is continuously irritating us. Whenever we come across that person, he will only talk very condescendingly. He will try to put us down in front of others. There are people who do that. They get some very great fun of doing that. So that can be adjusted by avoiding such people scrupulously. Whenever we sight those persons, we don't go near. My mother used to say in Tamil, of course, Dushtala Kanda Dura Velagu, like that she says. So if you see all such similar persons, get away from them. Don't go near them at all. That much some adjustment in the external condition we can make. But most importantly, strengthening our physical immune system is something which we can work upon without any dependence on the external factors. But of course, generally what people do, they continuously keep on adjusting the external setup. If there is a problem with the company, change the company. If there is a problem with the neighbors, change the house. If it is a spouse problem, change the spouse. All these things happen. But Vedanta focuses on the subjective factor, which is how can I improve my inner strength, my psychological resistance. So whatever may be the ups and downs in the external conditions, I am not seriously affected. I remain protected. And this freedom from mental diseases caused by the external factors is what is called moksha. If you are seeing what is moksha and all, very simple definition for moksha. Moksha is nothing but a very high psychological immunity system which keeps our happiness, our state of mind in tranquility, in equanimity, and free from all kind of mental diseases. That is what is moksha is. Once we reach that stage through all the sadhanas and practices which have been advised in the Shastra, we will be able to develop that high level of psychological immunity, and that will ensure happiness for us on a permanent basis without any dependence on any external factor for being happy. When we see the second chapter, we'll come across this shloka. Bhagavan Krishna says, Dukkeshu anudvigna manaha, Sukeshu vigata sprihaha, Vita raga bhayat krodaha, Stitadihi munihi uchyate. Who is a stitadihi? The one who has got a steady mind. A mind which is not disturbed, which is not wavering, which is not affected by the waves and tsunamis, which are caused by the external world attacking this mind again and again, remains in the same calm situation. He is a stitadihi. In effect, he is a jnani. So a jnani or a free person also faces challenges and difficulties, but he is anudvigna manaha. Means what? His psychological immunity is so much that he is not shattered, nor does he carry that problem to others. Neither he gets infected by the problem, nor he is infecting others with that problem. He is a stitadihi who has got anudvigna manaha. Anudvigna means unudvigna. Udvigna means agitated. So the one whose mind is not agitated at all, whatever may be the circumstances, he is a jnani. And this is the subject matter of the entire Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is not about changing the world, external world, but it is about developing inner resistance, building up our psychological immunity. Even when we try to achieve this freedom through other methods like changing the company, house, vehicle, spouse, changing the city, etc., it may give some temporary relief, but that is not a permanent solution. Because such problems will keep reappearing in one form or the other. So what we have to look for is a permanent solution, and which is what Gita talks about. Gita talks about strengthening myself, finding my inner resistance, and the consequent freedom from psychological disturbances. And as I said, this is what is moksha is. That is why Bhagavad Gita is called Moksha Shastra, resistance building Shastra. Resistance not at the physical level, but resistance at the inner level, at the emotional level. That is what Bhagavad Gita is. And this Shastra, this teaching, is meant for those people who recognize that we have to improve our resistance. People who realize that I have got a psychological weakness, that I am susceptible to raga, dvesha, kama, krodha, etc., that frequently I am getting into all this psychological breakdown, and which is not only affecting me and my mental peace and my happiness, it is affecting other people also around me. I cannot change other people, but what I can change is myself. So when I recognize that I require that inner strengthening, that I have got, because I have got an inner weakness, the person who has discovered this problem, the entire Gita is addressed to that person only. If one is in denial of these problems, then even Bhagavan cannot accept, cannot help such a person. What to talk of Gita? Of course, Gita also, Bhagavan is helping Arjuna to develop that inner strength. Isn't it? So therefore, the first chapter of the Gita is giving an introduction in which Arjuna is discovering this problem that he has got an inner weakness. And when I say the first chapter, it actually flows into the 10 slokas of the second chapter also. That is where the entire discovery, we will see that when we start the next second chapter next week, we will see the slokas, how Arjuna eventually, after all that has happened in the first chapter, all that he has told about, Varna Sankara, this, that, Papa and all that, how he discovers that there is some problem with him in his psychological condition. He accepts that I am confused, Krishna. He accepts that in the beginning of the second chapter. So, Arjuna, before trying to change or improve the world, he recognizes that he has first to strengthen himself. And therefore, to build this physical resistance, we take tonics and also do physical exercises, join a gym and all that. Similarly, a spiritual seeker is one who has discovered the need of an inner tonic and the sadhanas that go with it to build up the internal resistance or inner resistance. This is what the whole Bhagavad Gita is about. And in the first chapter of the Gita, Arjuna discovers his weakness, as I told you, and later, early in the second chapter, he becomes a spiritual seeker by surrendering to Krishna, and Krishna gives him the tonic of self-knowledge and also teaches him the sadhanas that he has to practice to gain the inner strength and eventually freedom or moksha. So the first chapter of the Gita is set in this entire background. That is why Acharya has taken the trouble, unless we recognize or we we sort of, see that Arjuna's problem is no different from the day-to-day problem that I face in my life, then we will not be able to relate to the entire Bhagavad Gita teaching. So essentially, if we want to follow Bhagavad Gita, if we want to understand the teaching and make use of the teaching for our benefit, we need to first of all identify the problem, and then we have to become a seeker, spiritual seeker. And we have seen the 46, 47 slokas in the first chapter. These slokas can be divided into 5 portions. The first portion is from sloka 1 to 20. And in these slokas, Acharya presents the preparations for the war. And the context for Arjuna getting infected with the samsara disease by contacting the Raga virus by the mere sight of the warriors on both sides who were assembled to fight in the Mahabharata battlefield and the Kurukshetra battlefield. So that is how the 21 to 20 slokas are presented. But just before, from the very first sloka which is there, which is Dhritarashtra Uvacha, before that this chapter begins, the Pandavas, Kauravas have assembled to fight it out and settle the issue of kingdom. Isn't it? We know that story rather. And all along, for 13 years in their exile, Arjuna has been thinking about this war only. He knew that this Duryodhana is not going to give even a small inch of land. He is not going to return the kingdom. He will come up with some excuse not to do that, because Arjuna knows Duryodhana's character. So, like it has been advised in the Shastra, he says, he thinks that I will follow all the non-violent methods first to settle the dispute. And once they are exhausted, which they have done, he has now come to the battlefield to fight the war as the last resort for the sake of dharma and destroy the adharmic people like Duryodhana, whom he calls Atatai. And not only Duryodhana, all those who are supporting him in this war also. So there is no, at the beginning of the first chapter, there is no conflict in the mind of Arjuna. And as we all know, this entire proceedings in the battlefield is being narrated by Sanjaya, who was a minister of Dhritarashtra, because he is able to watch the proceedings in the battlefield thanks to a special vision, like a CCTV camera given by Vyasacharya, and he is reporting what the goings on in the battlefield to Dhritarashtra. So in the first 20 verses, we saw the preparations for the battle, and also we were introduced to the important warriors on both the sides. And in the process, we had a glimpse of the Ahankara and Mamakara aspects of the characters of Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana also. And we also saw Duryodhana betraying diffidence, which is because at the back of his mind, he knows that what he is doing is adharma. So he is nervous at the beginning of this battle. And of course, afterward, Bhishmacharya enthuses Duryodhana, he blows the conch, and thereafter from both sides, the soldiers blow their conches, signaling the beginning of the battle. The crucial moment has come. The battle is about to begin. So this is the first part, the preparation of the beginning of the war. Then comes the second portion, which is from verses 21 to 25, in which Arjuna somehow, as a flash in his mind, he feels that he has to closely see the people with whom he has to fight. And he also indicates, there is an anger in him. He says, I want to see all those who have come to help Duryodhana also. and he directs Krishna to place their chariot between the two armies. Krishna does as told, but he places the chariot in such a way that Arjuna could see Bhishmacharya and Dronacharya clearly. And when this happens, when he sees them, it leads to a dramatic turn of events. This is the second part. From slokas 21 to 25. Then the third portion, from slokas 26 to 30, a drastic change happens in Arjuna. In these slokas, instead of seeing the people present there as warriors who have come to fight, who are actually on the side of adharma, he is looking upon them as his relatives and friends. And because of that, kripaya paraya vishtah, overpowered by kripa. Kripa here means attachment, not compassion. Attachment for relatives, so misplaced compassion at best you can describe kripa. Arjuna's kripa here. So because of this intense emotion, forgetting all about his dharma, he gets afflicted with raga and shoka when he starts thinking of the consequences of the war. What all Arjuna has said, nothing has happened actually. But it's all his futuristic projections. If I kill these people, what all things will happen? And that is why I don't want to kill these people. That is his logic, rather. And because of that futuristic thinking, he is overpowered by grief. And it is so intense that it percolates to his body also. Many times we do the same thing. Actually, if you actually sit and analyze many of our problems, it all our worries, our anxieties, all because of future. In fact, Swami Paramahansa in Tattvabodha classes, he used to say that a child is just born, not even the first birthday is celebrated. The parents become anxious about the future of the child. How we have to get the school admission, it's so difficult. After the school, college admission, how much money we will require for all these things. And the child is not even 1 year old, and these people, all future problems, they imagine and then become anxious, stressed. Everything, happens to the parents. This is exactly what has happened to Arjuna also. He is thinking into the future, which has not happened. So he has got all the psychosomatic symptoms showing intensity of the shoka, which is, he says that my mouth is drying up, my legs are shaking and all that. Even though nothing has happened, even the war has not started, all the relatives are safe and they are intact at this point in time. But the very thought of their destruction causes intense sorrow to him. Of course, in retrospect, it seems to be a blessing in disguise, because it is because of this shoka followed by moha alone that the teaching of Bhagavad Gita came about. Otherwise, if Arjuna had actually gone about his job as a dharmic war, we wouldn't have had the Bhagavad Gita at all. So there is the positive side also to that Arjuna's situation. So in this third portion, we discover Arjuna's weakness and his consequence problems. The first weakness presented is the problem of attachment or raga, psychological dependence on external factors. And this is a weakness because the moment we are psychologically dependent on any factor, then it means that our happiness is no longer in our hands. Our happiness is hooked to, connected to, dependent upon that external factor, which is not under our control. So, The external factors can determine whether we should be happy or not. That situation what develops. And this psychological dependence or this psychological need for this external crutches, as we can call, is called the problem of raga, attachment. And as I said, this is common to all of us. When we accept certain people to be around us all the time, we want our parents to be there all the time, our children to be there all the time. We cannot imagine either physical separation or hypothetical separation from them. Arjuna also had the same problem. Arjuna was as much a samsari as we are. Because he imagines a life without Bhishma and without Drona and without some other people, then he breaks down. No doubt, we have to physically depend upon the external world for our basic needs like food, clothing, shelter, etc. Therefore, Vedanta never talks about physical independence. Physical independence is not possible. You have to depend for physical needs rather. That's why Vedanta deals with the emotional or psychological dependence. In fact, what is Gita's ultimate lesson? We will see that in the second chapter. Atmaneva Atmana Tushtaha. One should develop so much of psychological strength that one finds happiness being oneself only in his own self, without any dependence on anything else for my happiness. I am happy with myself in spite of external factors, whether they are favorable or unfavorable. Many of us will wonder whether that is possible, but Gita says it is possible. At least Gita says, why can't you try? So therefore, this dependence is the problem number one discovered in the sloka 26 to 28. Then the consequence of raga is the fourth topic, which is discussed from the verse 28 to 35. What is the consequence? Shoka, sorrow or grief, otherwise called vishada. That is why the first chapter itself is titled Arjuna Vishada Yoga. The grief is an inevitable consequence of dependence, because when I depend upon an external factor, it's fine, but it is a potential danger, because just when I lean on something, whether it's a chair, wall, or even a walking stick, and that external thing falls, I will also have to fall. This is the problem of dependence. So, any leaning on any unpredictable, perishable factor is going to cause sorrow only. For some time initially, it may appear to give us some comfort. But what happens is, once we start depending on some external factor for anything, even for our physical needs, that dependence only grows, it never comes down. And eventually we become totally dependent on that external factor. And for whatever reasons, if that external factor disappears, we have a major problem in our hand. And that will cause us sorrow. So here, Arjuna is also facing the same problem. Not that the external factor on which he is dependent is gone, but mentally he imagines a state when they are not there. After the war, they will all be dead. I won't be. He is saying, what will I do in an empty palace when there is no Bhishma, there is no Drona? This is the question he is asking. So Arjuna faces intense sorrow, which is raga followed by shoka. This is the fourth topic of the Bhagavad Gita. Then comes the final topic, which is from Shoka, consequence of Shoka. This is covered in the verses 36 to 47. So what is the consequence of this raga, which is followed by Shoka? Consequence is moha, confusion, indecision, conflict, delusion. Delusion, not able to know what to do and what not to do. Suddenly I feel that I am hanging in the middle of the sky. I do not know what to do in life. These people who are in corporate world, many of us face this problem when we have around 45 years. We would have actually worked in the corporate, given our full, sincere work and everything. But when we will reach a stage where things will not move the way we want them to move, and we will feel that we have now nowhere to go. What to do? Should I quit this job? I have a family now. I have to support them. I'm at least getting a regular monthly income, but I am not happy with this job. The new set of bosses have come and they are unknown to me. I am unknown to them. So the earlier relationships have gone. They have moved on. What should I do? This is the confusion. This is the delusion many of us face. And this is called moha or aviveka. And Arjuna also faces the same confusion, which is, in his case, to fight or not to fight. And here, this delusion or moha of Arjuna, or for that matter, anybody who is under the spell of raga and shoka, is described. Delusion means what? Delusion means seeing things, you can call it upside down, seeing things wrongly. What was the right thing to do? What was a dharmic thing to do? Arjuna was considering that to be adharma. And what is adharma? He is considering to be dharma. He has come to the battlefield as a warrior. His role in the battlefield is as a warrior who is going to fight a dharmic battle. His role is to fight. But what Arjuna is doing is, his role as a warrior, he is mixing it up with his personal role, personality, his personal angle. And he is giving arguments from the personal angle as an individual why he should not fight. He says that I do not see any benefit coming out of this war for me. So if I see from my individual angle, this war is not good for me. That's what he says. And he misses the point. This war was not for his personal benefit. It was for protecting dharma and defeating adharma. That he coolly forgets. And this mixture, it happens left, right, and center with everybody. Again, that is something Vyasacharya brings out for us to relate with our own, with our own lives. Many times we also try to mix up issues and then get into all sorts of problems, especially psychological problems. And he doesn't stop there. Then he goes to Dharma Shastra. He is quoting Dharma Shastra and he gives argument. The large scale killing of people will result in the lack of leaders. People will be killed, men will be killed. So women will be left alone. Admixture of the varnas will take place. The Pitris will not get their Shraddha and that Lupta Pindodakam, the Pinda Udakam, they will not get the offerings of. Arjuna fails to appreciate that despite all these collateral damage, which no doubt will happen, it was necessary to keep the people who are following adharma in check. Because even if he doesn't do it, continues, the adharmic people will continue with the adharmic ways. Adharma will become a way of life for everybody. Even in that case also, all these admixture of varnas and pitris not getting shraddha and all eventually will happen. So it is very important, which he does not realize, to protect the dharma, so that even though immediately there are collateral damages, eventually the society will survive as a dharmic society. But he does not see all these things. Why? Because moha, delusion, confusion. So that is why he says that from all angles, from even Shastric angle, this war was not good. And he almost says, I feel sorry for having entered the battlefield. And then he concludes his argument in the 46th sloka, saying that even if he who is unarmed and unresisting is killed by Duryodhana, he would be fine with that. And that he will be spared from doing further papa. So he has come down to that level rather. That coming to fight, to kill Duryodhana, now he says, even Duryodhana kills me, it is okay with me. But despite all these arguments, he is not happy. Of course, he is feeling very dejected, depressed, and full of sorrow. And this is described in the last sloka by Sanjaya to Dhritarashtra. So having said all these things, Arjuna keeps his bow and arrows aside. He sits down on the seat of the chariot, his mind still overpowered by intense vishada, intense grief. So these three put together, raga plus shoka plus moha, attachment plus sorrow plus delusion, these three put together is what is called samsara. And whoever has these three is a samsari. So therefore, in the first chapter, Arjuna has discovered the problem of samsara. And through Arjuna, we are helped by the Gita to discover our own problems of samsara. And as I have been telling throughout these talks, even though Arjuna has discovered the problem, Krishna has not started giving the solution. Discovery of the problem or the diagnosis of the disease is the first step. The second step or second stage is that once we discover helplessness, we should know that we cannot solve the problem on our own. In Vedanta Shastra, it is called Dhainya Bhava or Karpanya. Therefore, the next natural stage is we have to surrender to someone who will give us a hand. This is called Sharanagati. So once we go through these three stages, discovery of the problem, discovery of helplessness, and surrender, then the fourth stage is the medication. The person whose hand we are holding, he will give us a program. Do this, follow these restrictions, and follow these instructions, take this medicine, etc. That will be administered. And this is the fourth stage. Similarly, here also, Arjuna has gone through only the first stage in the first chapter. he has to go through the second and third stages. Once this is done in the beginning of the second chapter, the first 10 shlokas, Krishna will step in to handle the fourth stage from the 11th shloka onwards in the second chapter. And the second chapter is a very beautiful chapter, which gives the comprehensive picture of the entire treatment. It's like the news headlines chapter. All important things contained, all important instructions contained in the entire Bhagavad Gita, 18 chapters. Krishna actually summarizes them and presents them in the second chapter. Therefore, we can say that second chapter is the essence of the entire Gita. And the second chapter has also got 4 portions. So since we have got about 4 minutes time, maybe 1 or 2 minutes extra I will take. I'll just give you an overview so that you know what to expect. So the first portion is Arjuna going through the other 2 stages also. That is helplessness, and he discovers that he cannot solve the present problem, and therefore he surrenders to Krishna. Krishna accepts the patient Arjuna, the disciple Arjuna, and decides to give the program of treatment. So, samsara nirvana aushadham, bhavaroga bheshajam, which is called Gita Shastram, is administered to Arjuna. But before administering the treatment of Jnana Yoga, it is important that Arjuna should gain Jnana Yogyata, fitness for receiving the treatment, isn't it? Even when we go to an hospital to get treatment, we are put under so many tests. Blood test, this test, that test, and all that, sugar levels, BP and all. Why? Because the doctors want to confirm that before they start the treatment, the body is fit to receive the treatment. In the case of Vedanta, in the case of Jnana Yoga, that fitness we will get through Karma Yoga. So in the second chapter, the first topic is Arjuna Sharanagati. The second is Jnana Yogyata Praptihi. The third is Karma Yoga. And finally, Krishna concludes this chapter by describing the nature of a healthy person. A person who has developed that inner resistance. The person who has solved the problem of Raga, Shoka and Moha. Krishna describes what his life will be. So just as a healthy person enjoys life, psychologically healthy person also enjoys his life thoroughly. Thus, the fourth topic is Jivan Mukti, the inner freedom. So these are the 4 topics we are going to see in the second chapter, which are Arjuna surrender, Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, and Jivan Mukti. And the details of which we can start from the next class. I think I have finished before time. Good going. Okay. So, sorry, where did I go? I'll say the prayers, and then if there are any questions, you can take. Om Purnamada Purnamidham Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadhaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Guruji.
Thank you.
Namaste, Guruji.
Mama, thank you. Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Hari Om Guruji. Thank you, Guruji.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Guruji. Very nicely summarized. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Guruji. Hari Om.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Guruji, and Happy New Year to all.
Happy New Year, Guruji.
Same to you. Thank you very much.
Namaskar, Mama. Happy New Year.
Namaskaram. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you.
New Year.
Thank you, Guruji. Wonderful. Happy New Year to all.
Thank you. Are there any questions or any comments? Of course, this is a summary chapter, so there is no very least possibility of any questions or anything being there. So if there are none, then with your permission, can I close the session?
Yes, Guruji.
Yeah. Okay. Right, then we will see you with this
Thank you, Guruji.
second chapter next Saturday. Okay, Hari Om. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Guruji.
Guruji. Thank you, Guruji.
Thank you.